Hey Wire fans, welcome to another Machiavellian Monday here on Soprano Street, and we are here today to evaluate Stringer Bell. Stringer provides an excellent example of someone who is thought to be Machiavellian due to his backdoor dealings and various attempts at manipulation, but really he's not. You see, Machiavellianism is far more specific than just who's the best schemer. It's essentially a how-to-rule manual for current or aspiring leaders, detailing the most effective ways to deal with specific circumstances and different types of people based on Machiavelli's historical observations. Stringer provides an interesting evaluation due to his desire to transition into the legitimate world. It would have been interesting to see how he would have fared in Amsterdam had he and it been around longer, or even how he would have done in real-life Baltimore more recently.
Generally, a pack will consist of 25 pieces. Baltimore City made a law where if you have less than 30 pieces, then it's not counted as a distribution charge.
Ultimately, we didn't get to see those things, but nevertheless, Stringer's desire to go legit does open him up to different ways of evaluation. So in evaluating Stringer Bell, we will do so primarily, though not exclusively, through his private dealings. When evaluating his dealings with Avon, Proposition Joe, Omar, Brother Mouzone, Marlo, and Clay Davis, we will find that he was very rarely Machiavellian, and when he was, it was only some of the time and usually to terrible effect. The reason for this usually comes down to a combination of his intelligence and getting caught between two Machiavellian principles. He who ignores what is done for what ought to be done sooner affects his ruin than his preservation, and a prince must act according to the spirit of the time and place. If not, they won't be successful. As to his intelligence, Machiavelli describes 3 levels of intellect, and Stringer is clearly not in the lowest group, which is incapable of understanding anything. Stringer falls into the second or middle group. He is clearly capable of learning from others, and he imitates men greater than himself, most notably Prop Joe, which is specifically recommended by Machiavelli. But he can't be classified in the first or highest group. People in this group are very aware of how they are perceived, as well as the potential motives of others, and Stringer is lacking in both. These two factors combine into a lack of situational awareness, which is made much worse by the fact that he thinks he is smarter than he is, and this is what leads him to being caught between those two principles. As he transitions from the streets to business, he is influenced into acting in a more manipulative and less direct fashion than he had previously, and as he continues further down this road, he often ignores what is done in the streets in favor of a more business-oriented mind frame, and vice versa, until eventually he is unable to distinguish time and place. To his credit, early in the series, Stringer was an excellent number 2 and had a couple of very Machiavellian moments. Machiavelli says a prince should always be near, and right off the bat we see Stringer providing a presence in the courtroom for Avon. Now, you could very easily say that his mere presence in the courtroom, and certainly some of his interactions, show a lack of awareness, but nevertheless, he was representing Avon, which is what he was supposed to do. He also acted in a Machiavellian way by using damages inflicted by the enemy to bring him closer and secure his power.
Let me get that pager. Oh, what's up? You serious? Serious. I'm gonna get you a New York supply number only. And these motherfucking local cats wanna talk to you, they gotta talk to me.
At this point, he was secured in his position to the point that pretty much everything goes through him, but it's when Avon goes to jail that Stringer's actions become murky from a Machiavellian perspective. This is also the point where Stringer begins to acquire the reputation for being Machiavellian, since this is the point in which the backdoor dealings really begin. Until then, he was a solid textbook number 2, but I'm going to take a moment and play devil's advocate here. According to Machiavelli, the number 2 should always put the prince's interests first, and he appears to be violating that with all his dealings. But is he really? He may have gone against Avon's wishes, but it can be argued that he was always acting in his best interests. Stringer didn't really show a desire to be number 1. He just wanted to change the direction of the business according to what he thought was in their best interest, and seemed to genuinely want to convince Avon to come along.
I mean, who gives a fuck who's standing on what corner if we taking that shit off the top, putting that shit to good use, making that shit work for us. We can run more than corners, B.
If Avon had gone along with it, Stringer gives us no reason to think he wouldn't have willingly settled right back into the number 2 spot. In Avon's absence, Stringer set up a court, just as Machiavelli said to do, and even in its seemingly absurd adherence to formalities, it falls right in line with the principle.
How we gonna stand?
Yo, she ain't recognize your ass, man.
How we gonna stand on some...
Come on, man.
According to Machiavelli, a prince should only accept advice from a select few, and even then, only when asked. So making them wait to be recognized was the way to go. However, Machiavelli also states that when advice is given according to those standards, a prince should be a patient listener, which Stringer wasn't.
Yeah.
Do the chair know we gonna look like some punk-ass bitches out there?
Motherfucker, I will punk your ass for saying some shit.
Frank.
What?
Poop did have the floor,
Shut
man.
the fuck up, man. This nigga too ignorant to have the fucking floor.
In this clip, he not only angrily rejected properly given advice, but it was advice about perception, which, as I mentioned, is an issue he will struggle with repeatedly. The first real backdoor deal that we see from Stringer is when he has D'Angelo killed. This can certainly be seen as an instance where Stringer was acting against Avon's wishes, but in his best interests, and in doing so, he acted in line with the Machiavellian principle of addressing problems quickly. D'Angelo posed a huge threat, and Stringer's response was one of the few times he acted both quickly and with situational awareness. Of course, the way he told Avon, not so much, but the act in and of itself was handled properly. However, shortly thereafter, Stringer begins to work more closely with Prop Joe, and Prop Joe's influence begins to seep in almost immediately. After the funeral, Prop Joe kicks off the conversation in his typical wordy fashion.
Every dope fiend in the city know that Avon been putting out piss and calling this shit. And the thing is, y'all sitting on some of the best real estate in the city. The terrace, the low rises, the avenue corners.
And Stringer seems quite irritated and wants him to get to the point.
Now, respecting the fact that you known to having a way with your words, man, when the fuck you gonna tell me something I don't know?
Despite being seemingly annoyed with Prop Joe's wordy preamble, it's a technique he will attempt to adopt moving forward. Also, Stringer had always had more of a business mind frame than your average street corner thug, but this line by Prop Joe,
Buy for $1, sell for $2, that all it need be.
seems to really hit home, and it's at this point that we see Stringer really start attempting to be more business and less street, like Prop Joe. Unfortunately for Stringer, he doesn't possess Prop Joe's ability to read situations and motives, but we will get to that later. During this initial meeting, Stringer finds himself with no quality connection and was afraid of losing his business. His solution was to give up some of his territory to Prop Joe in exchange for the ability to acquire higher quality drugs, hoping this would help secure his spot and allow him to continue making money. According to Machiavelli, this was the worst thing he could have done. Avon's solution wasn't much better, but that's a subject for his episode. From there, Stringer pushes the idea even further in forming the co-op, and things seem to be going pretty well for a while, but eventually he would find out why Machiavelli said he made the worst possible move.
Me and the boys had us a sit down, got a quorum, and took a vote that says, if y'all don't quit this war, we have a mind to shut you out. And when I say outstring, I mean out the package.
Because when you bring in a power greater than yourself to help save you, even if you win, you become captive to them. Even if he hadn't have formed the co-op, he still would have been under Prop Joe's thumb because he had no other true connect, nor does he seem to try and find one, which is odd considering a true businessman would understand the value of buying direct from the source. Either way, Stringer would have been screwed because he was entirely focused on his own moves and never really considered any ulterior motives Prop Joe may have had. Another area in which we see Stringer's blind faith in Prop Joe, as well as the influence Joe had on him, was in setting up the meetings with Omar. In the first meeting, he was really unaware of what motivated Omar, which is understandable, and he tried somewhat to negotiate with him. Even still, he remained more street than business.
You know there's dead on both sides, right? There's gonna be a whole lot more if this beef keep up. If the truth be told, there'll be more soldiers in one half than the other, you know what I'm saying?
Notice not only the words he said, but also his posture. He is right in Omar's face and very confrontational, which is not surprising considering he is hammering home the point that they have more soldiers. Contrast that with their next meeting.
See, all I know is whoever did him that way, they gets got.
Whoever did him that way, they still out there right now.
Notice how his posture, demeanor, and delivery have all changed to be somewhat more like Prop Joe, and it doesn't stop there. He had dropped the street mentality that he had in their first meeting and instead tried to be a puppeteer like Prop Joe. In this instance, if he had kept the street mentality, he would have realized he could just kill Omar right then and there. Omar has no real crew to retaliate. He was a lone wolf. I can understand why not at the first meeting. It was in public and out of respect to Prop Joe, but the second time, instead of being a gangster and killing Omar right then, he tried to kill two birds with one stone in pitting Omar against Brother Mouzone, which would ultimately be his undoing. While Omar might have realized it was a setup right after his encounter with Brother Mouzone, if Brother Mouzone had any doubts, Stringer's response put them to rest.
I will take care of them myself.
Them? Who came at you?
Showing a complete lack of awareness regarding how what he says is perceived, he might as well have just told Brother Mouzone he did it. Even Avon knew it and called him out on it.
I'm not saying who did this.
You asked him who it was?
Yeah, I asked him.
Why?
Why what?
How you gonna ask a soldier like Mouzone a question like that?
Another instance in which we see Prop Joe's influence on Stringer coming through is in his dealings with Marlo, specifically trying to get Marlo to join the co-op. Despite being annoyed by the wordiness of Prop Joe's initial proposition, Stringer adopts the same approach in trying to get Marlo, who is a man of few words, to join.
You smart, man. I could see that. I wanted you to choose somewhere safe for us to speak, but goddamn. Only bugs and this motherfucker gonna have legs.
Marlo is unimpressed and just stares back, waiting for Stringer to get to the point, but Stringer continues.
Nah, I appreciate smart. But you gotta know in this game, man, it ain't enough. You a student of history?
Marlo still just stares back.
Know what I mean? Government ain't want you to be organized. Nah, they want you scrimping and scraping and killing each other on the corner on some bullshit.
Boy, what the fuck you want?
And Stringer finally gets to the point.
Not me. That's why me and Prop Joe, we're getting ready to put this co-op together. Different crews, one package. Best dope, best coke. Share alike.
But his Prop Joe-inspired strategy failed to take into account Marlo's motives. Like Avon, Marlo is a gangster, he wants his corners, and he has no desire to be part of the co-op.
Tell our people to tool up.
I'm on it.
At this point, three Machiavellian principles come into play in terms of Stringer's handling of Marlo. First, when deciding on how to deal with an opponent, you must take into account the reason for their initial resistance. If they resisted because they were courageous, then they should be allowed to live, because if you can get them on your side, you have gained a courageous ally. But if they resist because they are ambitious, like Marlo, then they can never be trusted, which would be proven true later, and must be killed. This is where the second Machiavellian principle comes into play. Unlike with D'Angelo, where he handled the situation quickly and decisively, with Marlo he delayed the necessary in a futile effort to get him to join. The third Machiavellian principle that comes into play is that in a civil principality, which the co-op would have been, two distinct parties emerge: nobles who want to rule and people who don't want to be ruled, and neither can truly overcome the other. This is a principle that is seen throughout the show on many levels besides the co-op, from street-level guys like Omar, to the drug game with guys like Avon and Marlo, through the police with guys like McNulty, and even into the political world that Stringer tried to enter like a fish out of water. As usual, he was unaware of his perception, although others were.
Yeah. They saw your ghetto ass coming from miles away, nigga.
And also, as usual, he failed to think critically regarding the motives of others.
25 gets me the permits.
20 gets you the permits. 5 is for me for bribing these downtown motherfuckers.
$5,000? Really? You think he's going to risk that for $5,000 with no real history between the two of you? According to Machiavelli, when acquiring through secret favor, if the person's motive isn't a genuine affection for you, then they can't be trusted. He had abandoned the suspicious nature that his street self had shown early in Season 1 for a trusting naivety that comes from only knowing about a world through textbooks. His response, however, came right from his street side. His desire to assassinate Clay Davis is absurd, and everyone knows it.
So you finna go hit a state senator now, huh? Yo, you kill a downtown nigga like that, the whole world gonna stand up and take notice.
But it just goes to show how he had completely lost his handle on what was appropriate and in what situation. If Stringer had done it, the consequences would have been disastrous. Not that he would have lived long enough to see it, since shortly thereafter his missteps with Omar and Brother Mouzone came back to kill him. Ultimately, Stringer Bell was a very un-Machiavellian character despite his devious nature, and to keep with the chess analogy in the show, his lack of situational awareness made him like a chess player who is only focused on his own moves without any thought as to what his opponent's strategy may be. While you may do alright against checkers players, you will never do well against chess players, and make no mistake about it, D'Angelo was a checkers player despite trying to teach chess. Actually, if you look at it, neither of the people he was teaching made it, but those are issues for another episode. Thanks for watching this episode here on Soprano Street. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you at the next score.